Hey noble ones, welcome back to my channel. This is the Metatron speaking. You know, there is always that former educated part of me that is always constantly vigilant when inside this information maze that we call the internet. And as I was browsing through, I was introduced to a channel which is clearly oriented towards very young kids. I'm talking toddler level, and upon further inspection, I must say the situation is a little disconcerting. Alright, so the channel in question is called Cocomelon Nursery Rhymes, and it's a massive, monstrously big channel with 182 million subscribers, 1,200 videos, and a grand total of 188 billion views. Billion with a B. And generally speaking, when you look at their channel performance, you'll see that most of their videos get millions of views, and a few of them actually billions. First time for me to see the B right next to, I'm happy when I get 100,000 views. One of the reasons why these videos are so popular, because parents tend to just put them up to entertain their kids while they do other things. Now, considering the fact that I know that among you, my subscribers, some are parents, I decided to make this video to strongly suggest to you to keep your kids away from this channel for their sake. And here's why. All of this allegedly, just my opinion, just the opinion of a concerned citizen. Now, as you can see, I would describe Cocomelon as a silly songs for kids channel delivered in animated cartoon format videos, which is clearly designed to keep your youngs entertained with its bright colors, music, and whatnot. Now, at first glance, this may appear innocuous, but upon further inspection, particularly from the perspective of a teacher, I think you can easily build a case that this sort of content, in the way it's delivered, may in fact be, in my opinion, dangerous and harmful for your kids. Now, to begin building my case, I would like to first rectify a word that I used to describe Cocomelon's content. I said it was entertaining. I think a more fitting descriptor for this sort of content, the way it's created, is that it's compulsively absorbable by design. And of course, not just as a teacher, but as a content creator myself, I can recognize some of the strategy and production patterns that I have used to achieve that. For instance, continuous jump cuts, sometimes at an insane pace of a cut every 1.5 seconds, which equals a constant bombardment of new screens and perspectives. In other words, this is a bit like TikTok's jingling of keys, but on steroids. And most importantly, even though TikTok at least initially resonated more with teenagers, this type of channel appears to be specifically catered towards toddlers, which, once again in my opinion, makes this whole overload of external stimuli and sensory cues concerning. Now, the reason why I say that is because there are lots of studies that when you are a teacher, you usually tend to at least have a certain understanding of, particularly if your sort of classes are created with children in mind, is that even though there isn't a 100% consensus when it comes to the scientific approach on the actual effects of screen time onto children and a 100% statistically observed actual number of hours that will be the recommended daily amount, but still in general experts tend to be strict in the sense that, for instance, the American Academy of Pediatrics, APP, advised against screen time for children under 18 months. So if your kid is younger than 18 months, he should not have any screen time. And if your kids are 2 or older, then possibly a conservative 1 hour per day should be the maximum, at least, that is recommended daily. Therefore, the problem I have with this channel is that it is instead being built to capture young kids, specifically yours, for as long as the parent will leave them in front of the whatever device, whether it be a television, monitor, iPad, or a phone. Now, there is already a lot of accumulating evidence against the potential negative effects and associations when exposed to a continuous fast-paced screen motion, or what we could call stimulus interchange, which, given enough time, will affect your children's potential ability to focus negatively. Not to mention their attention span, and consequently this can also lead to a misregulation of their behavior and emotions. Now, before going deeper into this, I would like to address the elephant in the room. Societally speaking, I believe we have slowly and silently been accepting this really bad trend whereby entertaining your child has become more important than educating your child. And since I always tell you how it is, I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. A YouTube series, even more so from this type of channel, should not babysit your kid. Whatever sort of content that we feed the children, particularly when you're not looking, has to be conducive to emotional equilibrium, but at the same time stimulating their natural curiosity. And therefore, I'm absolutely adamant when I say that we have to meticulously calibrate any forms of instructional methodologies, which in this case, of course, at least for a large percentage of parents, has become, let's let Cocomelon nursery rhymes babysit our kids. Now, there is a monumental amount of evidence, and of course I will leave several links in the description below for you to check, that points to the idea that screen time should absolutely be monitored and limited when it comes to very young ones. And it is absolutely imperative to understand that critical, appropriate amount of time, which must be based upon analyzed data, not whatever this corporation or massive content conglomerate that it is decides to do, because whatever they do, they're going to try and make it as addictive as possible because it generates them a lot of money. See, the problem here is that we're talking about toddlers, so their brain is particularly, if not extremely, malleable at this stage, and therefore you're setting a default that then will not be repeated once taken away from this screen when it comes to the much slower pace of real life. There is a very strong causal link between a continuous exposure to a screen for a toddler and the negative impact on the child's cognitive development, which will also affect their societal and emotional behavior. And addiction is indeed another very strong aspect of this. So, bear with me. If your child gets addicted to this, what happens when you take the screen away? Discontent, mood swings, pitching a fit, it's withdrawal. Now, ironically, considering the way our language was constructed, I find it very interesting, if not intriguing, that we have a common word for people who are constantly on the internet and people that are addicted to drugs. Users. Do we really want to get our toddlers to that? And you know when I mentioned money? Well, let me show you what I'm talking about. Let's jump into Social Blade. Now, Social Blade is that platform that can give you an idea. It's an estimate on how much content creators make. Now, they don't always get it right. In fact, sometimes in my experience, I think that they shoot a little low. But already, when you look at this, we are on the Social Blade of Cocomelon Nursery Rhymes, and we see that their estimated monthly earnings is between $400,000 and $7.7 million. And once again, in my experience, I would completely ignore this and look into this as a possible low estimate. And yes, you heard that right, monthly, not yearly. In fact, if we look at the estimated yearly earnings, then we are talking between 5 to 92 million dollars. Do you really think that whoever runs this channel cares about your kids? Or do you think this has now become such a monstrous business that clearly your child is just a clog into this money printing machine? And whatever they will do, all of this allegedly, just my opinion, so that they don't sue me. Just the opinion of a concerned citizen. Take this with a pinch of salt. You see, the problem that I have with this is that strategic efficacy, which is one of the most pragmatic, cold, and mechanical aspects of content production on YouTube, is what effectively turns the person watching into a user. And for those massive channels, like at this one, that is clearly the priority, because there is a whole business aspect to this. And for anyone who is thinking, but what about like an educational aspect to this? Well, educational videos and toddlers? No. Let me show you why. Now, there are several studies that we could read, but there are a couple that I wanted to point out. One is from the University of Auckland, and it's called Screen Time, the Effects on Children's Emotional, Social, and Cognitive Development. And on this one we read, screen time in children under 2 years of age mostly takes the form of background television exposure, where the television is playing in the room, but the child is not paying attention to it. So kind of a less intense form of what Cocomelon actually manages to do. Here it says infants only look at screens for a few seconds at a time, and the state of their brain development does not allow them to learn well from two-dimensional media. In addition, images on screen lack important three-dimensional features and learning cues, such as depth, making it difficult for the child to transfer what they see represented on a screen to real life. Therefore, screen time in this age group is mostly a passive activity and should not be considered educational despite the availability of products marketed as such. And I would like to also underline how it's interesting, even though usually television, since it's focused and marketed for adults, is not going to be able to grasp their attention for more than a few seconds at a time, Cocomelon does, because it is designed to do so. But it's not that the child is actually learning something, because as we can see, their brain don't really function that way when it comes to two-dimensional screens. It's just that they are mesmerized and continuously hyperstimulated by a constant changing of things that happen on screen. It's basically as if they are hypnotized. Maybe not the most scientific term to describe this, but you know what I mean. And I would like to jump onto this other study called Impact of Screen Time on Children's Development, Cognitive, Language, yeah, language is a big one, Physical and Social and Emotional Domains, which was created by the Multimodal Technologies and Interaction. And here we read, technology has become integral to children's lives, impacting many aspects from academics to socialization. Children of today's generation are growing up with digital devices such as mobile phones, iPads, computers, video games, and smart gadgets. Therefore, screen time has become ubiquitous in children's daily routine. In my opinion, the judicial application of any sort of pedagogical principles that can really help us not only significantly enhance the efficacy of whatever educational intervention that we are trying to do for the kids, but we can also make sure that the kid, based on their age, are already mentally and cognitively equipped to utilize any form of tools that we decide to give in their hands. As an educator, one of the main goals when it comes to whatever sort of pupil or student that you have, regardless of their age, is making sure that the people that are assigned to you, whether it's like a teacher-student relationship or whether it's a parent-child relationship, improve and grow. Now, since video games are mentioned here, I would like to say that I'm a massive proponent of video games. I'm not one of those people that says, oh no, video games are bad for you. But if it's a 2-year-old, if it's a 1-year-old we're talking about, then it's not the same as, oh, your 14-year-old son or your 15-year-old daughter is enjoying a little time after they study playing Final Fantasy. That's okay, that's fine. And there are some video games that can even be excellent ways to learn. For example, languages. If your child, your teenager, is actually playing in a different language, and so they're getting interest and passions maybe for history, so that's okay. But here we're talking toddlers and infants, and there is a massive difference on the possible effects when it comes to screen time of all forms. If you're enjoying this video so far, please take a moment to check out my Patreon page. With as little as a $5 support, you can help us ensure that we can continue to produce high quality and high researched content, and at the same time you get access to polls, extra videos, unlisted streams, and much more. Thank you so much. Continuing, media-centric parenting is a style in which a substantial portion of the child's daily routine involves using electronic devices such as smartphones, tablets, computers, and televisions. Media-moderate parenting aims to balance a child's use of technology and other activities by limiting screen time and monitoring the content children consume. Now, this is absolutely paramount, and in fact, I want to go as far as saying that this is your duty as a parent to make sure that you monitor the sort of content that your children are consuming, and most importantly the amount of time that your children are spending, because once again it has been there's a lot of discussion here on, as you can see, on the developmental domains, so cognitive ability, memory, language development, and even social and emotional interactions that will affect your child if you don't monitor this. And to make sure I'm not misunderstood, I'm not saying that you cannot at all have devices to help you entertain your child, but they have to be organized based on their appropriate age, just like everything really. I mean, any sort of teaching that goes towards children should be done in an age-appropriate way, and it's the same thing when it comes to tools that we utilize in order to entertain them, teach them, and help us making sure that we have a little extra time to, you know, cook dinner and prepare everything we need to do. Now, I absolutely understand the allure. You're a busy parent, you've got to work, you've got to cook dinner, you've got to clean the house, you've got a million things to do, and I'm 100% with you. I'm very sympathetic towards that. However, I also do want you to know what happens, or what could happen, when you leave your toddler in front of that iPad or monitor for the entirety of the afternoon before any possible damage will happen, and then regardless of your very busy routine, you'll have to deal with all of the posthumous correction, which is not always easy. And the cultivation of nascent intellect necessitates a multifaceted approach. incorporating a plethora of empirically validated strategies to maximize cognitive, social, and emotional growth. And in fact, they themselves show us how they do it, and all the different experiments that they did, like literal tests, where they would put like a candidate. I think there was like Sunny V2 was mentioned in this as among the videos that I've seen about this. And in general, they were putting like these kids in front of two different screens, and they were like testing to see what sort of colors and what sort of images and what sort of jump cutting would be the one that would get them glued onto the screen. And then every time they would be distracted and look at the other screen, then they would know, oh, okay, we need to change that. Like, this is engineered, and your child has zero chance at not getting completely mesmerized. Well, I can absolutely tell you this much. I know for a fact that I'm not going to use this. It doesn't matter how busy life gets. That's not a channel that I am going to use for any of my future children, and it's definitely not something that I would advise to any of my friends. And therefore, I kind of wanted to raise these possible problems, which once again, alleged problems, which are my opinions, with you subscribers. Thank you very much for watching, and remember, the Metatron has spread his wings. Goodbye.